Hi, it's Alaska Granny. Do you ever wonder about the top threats that we should be prepping for? If you look at the news, it's all doom and gloom. Everything is going to fail. SHTF is just around the corner. Well, that can become concerning. It can also be depressing. It can make you feel like, what is even the point? I thought all this SHTF was going to happen, and yet it really didn't. And then I've spent all my time and energy on prepping. There are some threats we cannot control, so we need to decide what are the actual threats that we can prepare for. What things do we have control over in our lives? We don't want to give up hope, become discouraged, and give up on prepping, but then we don't also want to focus all of our energy on prepping for SHTF. We want to focus on the things we can do to protect our family. So what I try to do is figure out what are the threats that are most likely to occur in my life to me and where I live. The top threats that I'm prepping for are, number one, a power outage. Where I live in Alaska in the wintertime, if I lose power, it could be life-threatening not to have heat. So I try to make sure that I can prepare to take care of myself in those kind of an emergencies. The next thing I'm concerned with is winter storms, terrible weather. Last winter was one of the worst we've had in Alaska. There was a time when I couldn't leave my home for 2 weeks because the storms were so bad. The snow was so deep and I wasn't able to negotiate out of my long driveway. And then once I finally could get out of my driveway, the streets were nearly impassable unless you were on a major street. So it didn't make sense to try to go somewhere. So if you prepare, what if I have a winter storm and I do need to stay at home? What things do I need to keep my family running smoothly? Do I have the things that I need that I could stay home for 2 weeks? I have enough food, water, hygiene supplies, and the things, the basic necessities that keep life running smoothly. The next threat that I prepare for are earthquakes. They're common in a place like Alaska, all up and down the West Coast, the whole ring of fire. In fact, I don't believe there's anywhere in the world that has never had an earthquake. Many of them, though, are very weak. You don't even feel them. But earthquakes are happening all the time. But unless they're over, say, maybe a 3-point earthquake, I think you can't even feel them. But I've experienced many of them, and you don't necessarily get used to them. But the minor shakeups, they become sort of like, okay, we're all right. It's going to be fine. And when they get to be a little bit bigger is when we really become concerned. So if you live in an earthquake area, you need to make sure that you have earthquake supplies, that you have fastened things to the walls, you've put breakable things away, that your house could be shake, rattle, and rolled, and everything isn't going to fall over, and some of the threats are from things that fall on you that can actually harm you. So I guess I've been through enough. I realized that wasn't that big because things aren't necessarily falling over anymore because enough things have fallen over and broke and they've either been tossed out or I don't have them out anymore. So there is that sort of prepping, but then you also need to know in an earthquake, where do you go? How do you stay safe? You need to duck and cover, get in a doorway, and not go berserk. People who try to run outside are more likely to fall and get hurt. Another threat after an earthquake is gas line leakages, which can lead to fires and explosions. So if you have natural gas in your home, make sure that you have the tool that can turn off the gas line. And just in case there's a leak, and never light any kind of a flame around anywhere where there might be a gas leak because you can cause another huge problem with an explosion. Figure out if you have natural gas in your home. Figure out what is the tool that you need. Where is your gas meter? How would you turn off your gas? And then don't turn it on again unless you have called and had someone inspect it so that you make sure that you really are safe. I'm blessed to live in a wooded area, but that also brings the risk of wildfires, and so I'm very concerned with wildfires. So I try to make sure that I clean up my area, that I don't have dried limbs and piles of leaves and any debris that are left around that could be flammable. The last few summers, it's been so dry in Alaska, there have been burn bans, and you aren't allowed to have any kind of fire pits, any kind of fire around, which is perfectly fine with me. I'm more than willing to give up the fun of having a fire pit so that I can enjoy living in the woods. I also try to figure out how I can get sprinklers going over some of my property to try to protect it so that the plants don't completely dry out. And I have a few neighbors and we have plans together on what we would do in case there was some threat from fire. Another big concern for me is supply chain interruptions. In fact, this summer, I think it was a strike or something in the Seattle-Tacoma area, and that was interfering with the shipping of freight to Alaska, which it wasn't so much a threat to me personally, but I think about all the people that live out in the villages. There's only one time during the year when the barges can bring the freight and go down the rivers to the villages. They're already challenged by not being on the road system and not having all of the amenities that people take for granted, but then to lose the opportunity when the weather is here, the window of opportunity during the summer that the barges can bring the supplies to the villages. It's just wrong that that's not a priority, that those goods should be continued to be shipped. That's one of the reasons that you want to learn how to use the things you have. What is around you that's abundant, that's natural resources that you can supply some of the things for yourself. And yes, there are challenges wherever we live, so that's what you need to figure out. What are the challenges where I live? What are the threats to my family, and how can I mitigate those challenges by preparing? And that's why you want to be a prepper, because maybe the world isn't coming to an end. Maybe we're not blowing up in a nuclear war, but we could end up having other kinds of weather events and economic events that just come to our family where maybe we don't have enough money. There's been changes or hardships for whatever reason. Prices are going up, and perhaps you're having some struggles with income. That's where it's crucial to make a budget, figure out what resources you do have and how to best budget those, how to best spend those so that you can provide the most essential things that you need. If it means cutting out a few things, that's what I'm willing to do. Nearly everyone can find an extra $1 or $2 in their budget that they can provide some type of prepping supply that can make your life smoother in the future. So my number one priority is to stockpile food, add to my stockpile, store up foods that are long-lasting. Also to have open and eat foods, because in a lot of emergencies, we need to just eat something now. So having some I don't need to cook anything meals are great. Then meals that can make a little bit of cooking. And then in a long, drawn-out, critical situation, you'll want to have that long-term storage of beans and rice. There's almost no emergency situation when we want to begin digging into our beans and rice, but we need to have those so that we can add them into our regular meals, learn to use them, learn how they work. What are the steps to prepare them? How much fuel do you need? How much water do you need? And what recipes do you actually enjoy eating? It's also important to keep your gas tank full of fuel. You never know when you might have to evacuate or head to the doctor or head to an emergency room in the middle of the night. That's not the time when you want to realize not only do you have no cash, maybe credit cards, machines aren't working, gas stations are closed. You don't want to make an emergency for yourself by overlooking the simple task, the simple chore of keeping your gas tank at least half full. What else can you do to help you address the challenges is try to stay physically fit. I know that's something I don't do as much as I should, but it's important that we stay active, that we're able to do the things that we need to garden or hike around, run the vacuum cleaner, lift things. So you want to make sure that you're staying active so that you can continue to do the chores that you need to, which could become more complex in an emergency situation. Try to take every opportunity that you have to save some money, and maybe if you have the opportunity to make and earn a little bit more money. There are all kinds of side hustles and side gigs that you can bring in a few extra dollars if you need to. Rather than playing another video game or watching another TV show, try to think of ways that you can use the things you have. Develop hobbies and skills and activities that will actually help you challenge the reality of what your situation is. Learn to use a camping stove. Learn to filter water. Learn to make fire starters. Learn to go out and walk around in your neighborhood and figure out what plants are out there that you could actually harvest if you needed to. Are there wild berries, wild greens? Maybe your neighbors even have a fruit tree and they don't bother picking the fruit anymore, and you could ask permission and perhaps that could be available to you. There's always little ways to challenge ourselves to find new ways to provide the things we need. Learn to use tools so that you can fix and repair and maintain the things that you have. It can be a challenge and a struggle trying to maintain the things we have, but it's important that we learn how. Because number one, perhaps you can't find someone that can help you. And number two, maybe you can't afford to pay someone to come and do it. Plus, the more we learn, the better off we're going to be. So we can at least try to troubleshoot things. Then if we still need more help, it's okay to reach out. But see what you can figure out on your own. And it's surprising what you can find if you Google things. Then realize that no matter what happens in the world, in the economy, or to your family, if you are a prepper, which is a lifestyle choice, and you have a stockpile of some things that you normally need and use, you're still going to have those things. So even if bad times come, you have the way to continue to live your regular life. You have your lifestyle insurance with your prepping supplies. Even if things go bad, you can go to your prepper pantry and you can make some food and meals for your family. Depending on how much food you store, you'll still be able to feed your family for weeks, for months, or maybe even a year. And that brings a lot of comfort to me, knowing that I don't need to worry about those issues. I can then spend my time enjoying my life rather than worrying what could go wrong. I don't want my life's energy to be focused on the negative, but that I prepared so that I can provide those things. And so then I'm not as worried. I'm not scared. I'm prepared. Maybe you know people that say nothing's going to happen. Everything's been fine. It doesn't matter if there never is a disaster or a challenge or hard times because you're stockpiling things that you actually use. You can still go to your pantry and you can feed your family. You can make meals. That can even be a benefit that I don't even want to go to the store. So I can go to my prepper pantry and I can make meals for as long as possible until I feel like going to the store again. So it has a benefit of releasing time back to you, free time that you can spend doing other things that you want. So once again, be prepared, not scared. Figure out what are the threats that are most likely to happen in your location where you live, whether it's wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, even volcanoes. I've even experienced a few volcanoes, and yeah, they're a challenge, but guess what? You get up, you get going, you get through it. We're all going to be okay if we have the right preparation and the right mindset. So don't be a prepper out of fear. Do it out of the desire to take care of yourself and face the future no matter what's going to happen. We want to make the best of it. Leave it in the comments if you have any other suggestions on how we can face the threats that might come to us, how to stay positive, and what are the things that you think are critical no matter what the emergency situation. I hope you'll like my video, share my video, and please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.